The governor, as a matter of fact, cited a new Siena poll out today that asked New Yorkers where they stood on the best way to control gun violence. The poll showed people favor proposals for increasing penalties for banning assault weapons, 73 to 26%. And they support tougher penalties, 91 to 8%. However, they oppose placing armed guards in schools by a 52 to 46% margin. And they oppose training and arming teachers, 69 to 30%. Steve Greenberg from the Siena Research Institute joins us now to talk more about this poll. And Steve, I'm assuming you asked these questions in anticipation of the vote, not after the vote. Is that right?
Well, the poll was actually in the field starting last Thursday. We did it after the governor proposed some of these measures in his State of the State address. We had the two that you talked about that are overwhelmingly supported by New York voters, and then we had the other two that are not supported, which are proposals put forward by the NRA. So we did not know on Thursday when we started this poll that, in fact, it was going to get passed so quickly. But we were calling voters prior to passage, during passage, and then into Tuesday after passage as well.
Yeah, it must have been gratifying then to hear the governor today on Fred's radio show basically using your poll as justification for his moving forward, even though one didn't necessarily follow the other.
Well, that's exactly right. Look, anytime the governor or anyone else talks about the Siena poll, it makes us very happy. But I'm sure the governor had polling data from himself where he knew the position of New Yorkers on these issues.
How did it break down regionally in terms of your polling? Because obviously there's a big question here about whether this is a downstate, upstate argument. And I'm wondering, did you have a fairly even split in terms of who was asked?
Oh, absolutely. Look, we poll based on the results of this survey are based on the enrollment of the state of New York. We poll in proportion to the enrollment. What we found, though, if we look at just the assault weapon ban, far more support for a downstate than upstate. But even among upstaters, 60% of upstate voters support the assault weapon ban, 39% oppose. When we asked about the NRA and whether voters have a favorable or unfavorable view of the NRA, overall, statewide, voters have an unfavorable view, very heavily unfavorable downstate. Among upstate voters, 50% of upstate voters are favorable toward the NRA, 45% are unfavorable. And when we look at the assault weapon ban question alone among NRA supporters, just among those who have a favorable view of the NRA, the assault weapon question is virtually dead even. 46% support it, 53% oppose it. So slightly more opposition. But even among those voters who view the NRA favorably, half of them, or nearly half of them, support the assault weapon ban.
Do you think that you can extrapolate this out, the numbers that you see here and the questions that you asked, to say that the people that you polled saw the guns themselves as a bigger issue than perhaps taking more security measures in schools?
Well, I think what we see is that I think voters, and it was closely divided, as you pointed out, on the issue of whether to have armed guards in schools. I think there's a number of voters, you know, a little bit more than half of the voters, who are wary of that, are nervous about putting armed guards in our school. And let's not forget, we go back to one of the earlier examples from a decade ago of Columbine. In Columbine, there was an armed guard who was able to get off 4 shots before the majority of the students were killed. Yeah. And it still didn't do any good, unfortunately.
Well, it's a fascinating poll, and we appreciate so much your being with us and sharing some of those numbers with us today. Steve Greenberg from Siena, thanks so much.